The year was 2347. Humanity had spread across 12 star systems. They built cities on moons and stations in the empty darkness between worlds. They thought they were alone in the universe. They were wrong. Captain David Miller stood on the bridge of the USS Constellation, humanity's largest warship. He was a tall man, with gray hair and calm eyes. He had served in space for 30 years. He had seen many strange things, but nothing prepared him for what appeared on his screen that morning. "Sir, we have unknown contacts," Lieutenant Kevin Park said. His voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. 47 ships. They just appeared out of nowhere. Miller walked to the viewport and looked out. The alien ships were beautiful in a terrible way. They were silver and gold, shaped like teardrops, and each one was bigger than anything humans had ever built. They hung in space like gods looking down at insects. "Open a channel," Miller said. The screen flickered. An alien face appeared. It had 4 eyes, blue skin, and a mouth full of small teeth. It wore robes made of light itself. When it spoke, the translator turned its words into English. "I am Ambassador Thel of the Galactic Council. We represent 847 species. We have watched your kind for some time. You have grown enough to be noticed. This is your fortunate day." Miller said nothing. He waited. "The Council offers you protection," Thel continued. "You will become a protectorate species. You will follow our laws. You will pay tribute. In return, we will keep you safe from the dangers of the galaxy. This is not a request. All species accept. This is how it has been for 50,000 years." Miller looked at Dr. Emily Carter, his cultural expert. She was a small woman with sharp eyes. She had spent her whole life studying alien signals. Now, she was finally meeting the source. "Captain," she whispered. Miller nodded. He turned back to the screen. Ambassador Thel was smiling. If that's what his expression was. He clearly expected only one answer. "Ambassador," Miller said slowly, "I thank you for your offer, but I must refuse." The alien's 4 eyes blinked. All of them. At the same time. "I do not understand. Perhaps the translation is wrong. You cannot refuse." "I can," Miller said. "And I do. Humanity will not become anyone's protectorate. We will not follow your laws. We will not pay tribute. If you want to talk to us as equals, we welcome that. But we will not kneel." Thel's blue skin turned a darker shade. "You do not understand. In 50,000 years, no species has refused. You are small. You are young. You cannot survive alone." "Maybe," Miller agreed. "But we would rather die free than live as servants. That is who we are. That is who we have always been." Dr. Carter stepped forward. "Ambassador, let me explain. Our species has a long history. We have fought wars against each other for thousands of years. We have had kings and emperors who demanded obedience. And every time, people rose up and said no. We killed our own kings. We burned our own thrones. Freedom is not just something we want. It is something we need. It is written in our blood." Thel was silent for a long moment. His 4 eyes studied the humans like they were a puzzle he could not solve. "You are making a mistake," he finally said. "The Council does not accept refusal. There will be consequences." Miller smiled. It was not a happy smile. "We understand. But our answer is still no." The screen went dark. The alien ships hung in space for another hour. Then, one by one, they turned and vanished into whatever strange dimension they had come from. Lieutenant Park let out a breath he had been holding. "Maybe," Miller said, "or maybe we just told them who we are. Send a message to Admiral Wilson. Tell him what happened. Tell him we said no." The message traveled across space at the speed of light. It reached Earth 3 hours later. Admiral James Wilson read it in his office. surrounded by screens showing the positions of every human ship in existence. His aide looked worried. "Sir, what do we do now?" Wilson leaned back in his chair. He was an old man, but his eyes were young and fierce. He had read history books. He knew what humans were capable of when pushed. "We do what we always do," he said. "We prepare. We build. We train. And when they come back, we show them what a mistake they made." He opened a secure channel to the United Nations Space Council. Leaders from every nation on Earth appeared on his screen. "Ladies and gentlemen," Wilson said, "first contact has been made. They offered us slavery with a pretty name. We said no. Now we wait and see what happens next." The leaders looked at each other. Some were scared. Some were excited. But not one of them suggested changing the answer, because they were human, and humans do not kneel. Far away, on the alien flagship, Ambassador Thel sat in his quarters and tried to understand what had happened. In his long life, he had brought 112 species into the council. All of them had accepted. All of them had bowed. But these humans had looked at him with strange fire in their eyes. They had smiled while refusing. They had spoken of death like it was better than submission. He did not understand. But for the first time in centuries, he felt something cold in his chest. He did not know it yet, but it was fear. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council was the largest room ever built. It floated in space above the capital world of Nexus Prime. Inside, representatives of 847 species sat in seats that circled a central stage. Some were tall and thin. Some were short and round. Some had no bodies at all, just clouds of colored light. They had ruled the galaxy for 50,000 years. They had never faced a problem they could not solve. Until now. High Chancellor Moore sat at the center of the stage. He was the oldest being in the room. His body had died long ago, and now he existed as pure energy. Glowing, soft gold. He had led the council for 3,000 years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had brought peace to 100 wars. But today, he felt something strange. Something uncomfortable. He did not have a word for it yet. "Play the recording," he commanded. The chamber went dark. A hologram appeared, showing Captain Miller's face. His words echoed through the room. "We would rather die free than live as servants." When the recording ended, the chamber exploded with noise. Hundreds of species talked at once. Their translators filled the air with confused sounds. War Minister Croth stood up. He was a reptile, 7 feet tall, with scales the color of blood. His species had conquered 30 worlds before joining the council. He still remembered how good it felt. "This is simple," he growled. "These humans are primitive. They have only 400 ships. We send the subjugation fleet. We destroy half their worlds. The survivors will learn respect." Many voices agreed with him. The subjugation fleet had never failed. It had 10,000 warships. It had brought 200 species to their knees. Surely these humans would be no different. But a young voice spoke up. "May I speak?" The chamber fell quiet. A small figure stepped forward. She was Scholar Yenny, a historian from a peaceful species called the Villani. Her people had large eyes and soft blue fur. They were known for asking questions that made others uncomfortable. "I have studied the human transmissions," Yenny said. "For 200 years, they have been broadcasting signals into space. I have watched their history. I have seen their wars." She waved her hand, and images appeared. Soldiers charging into gunfire. Cities burning. People standing in front of tanks. Men and women hanging from ropes for refusing to obey kings. "These beings fight each other constantly," Yenny continued. "They kill their own leaders. They destroy their own cities. And when faced with impossible odds, they do not surrender. They fight harder." War Minister Krath laughed. "So they are violent primitives. Even better. Violence we understand." "No," Yenny said quietly. You do not understand. They do not fight to win. They fight because they cannot do anything else. I watched a recording of a human battle. A small group of soldiers was surrounded. They had no hope of victory. Their commander asked if they would surrender. The chamber was silent. They said no, Yenny whispered. And then they charged. Every single one of them died. But they died fighting. This is not normal behavior. This is something else. Something we have not seen before. High Chancellor Moore raised a glowing hand. What do you suggest, scholar? I suggest we try again. Better terms. Perhaps they will accept equality instead of subjugation. The council debated for 3 days. In the end, they voted to send a second mission. They would offer the humans limited freedom. They would let them keep their own laws, as long as they joined the council. The mission left with great hope. It returned 2 weeks later with the same answer. No. Ambassador Thel stood before the council again, his blue skin pale with exhaustion. They said our offer was slavery, wearing a different mask. They said if we want peace, we must treat them as equals, complete equals, with full voting rights, with no tribute, with nothing above them. The chamber went mad. Full equality? A species they had just discovered? It was unthinkable. It was insulting. It was impossible. In the back of the room, a human sat quietly. His name was Frank Reynolds, and he was Earth's unofficial observer. The council had allowed him to watch, thinking it would teach him respect. Instead, he sat there with a small smile on his face, taking notes. Scholar Yenny found him after the session. You are not afraid, she said. It was not a question. Frank looked at her with kind eyes. No. Why? Your species is small. Your technology is young. The council has ruled for 50,000 years. How can you refuse? Frank thought about the question. He thought about his grandfather, who had fought in old wars on Earth. He thought about his daughter, who was training to be a pilot. He thought about all the humans who had ever lived and died for the simple right to choose their own path. Because surrender is not in us, he finally said. You keep thinking we will count your ships and see that we cannot win. But that is not how we think. We count our ships and see how much damage we can do before we fall. And that number is always higher than our enemies expect. Yenny stared at him. You would rather die than submit? Every single one of us, Frank said. Every single time. That night, High Chancellor Moore floated alone in his private chamber. He searched his ancient memory for the feeling in his chest. It took him a long time to find it. Fear. He had not felt fear in 3,000 years. He was feeling it now. The subjugation fleet came out of hyperspace like a wave of silver death. 10,000 warships, each one the size of a small moon. They had conquered 200 species. They had never lost a single battle. When primitive species saw them, they usually surrendered before a shot was fired. War Minister Krath stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Victory. His scales shone under the red battle lights. He was smiling. This would be easy. These humans had only 400 ships. This was not a battle. This was an execution. Send the message, he ordered. His voice boomed across space, reaching every human ship, every human colony, every human ear. People of Earth, you have refused the Council's generous offers. You have insulted 847 species. This is your final chance. Surrender now, and only half of you will die. Refuse, and we will burn every world you have touched. You have 1 hour. On the other side of the border, Admiral Robert Hayes sat in his command chair aboard the USS Liberty. He was a quiet man with steady hands. He had spent 40 years preparing for this moment. So had every human before him. How many ships do we have? He asked. 412, sir, his aide replied. Hayes nodded. And they have 10,000. Yes, sir. Good odds. Hayes smiled. It was not a joke. Open a channel, all frequencies. His voice went out into the darkness. "This is Admiral Robert Hayes of the United Earth Defense Force. You are approaching sovereign human space. You have been warned once. Turn back now, or we will consider you hostile. There will be no second warning." On the eternal victory, Krath laughed so hard his scales rattled. "They warn us? 400 ships against 10,000? Are they mad? Don't. Don't. He gave the order. The subjugation fleet crossed the border. What happened next would be studied for 1,000 years. The first council ships died in silence. One moment they were there, the next they were fire and dust. Human weapons, hidden on asteroids and moons, tore through their shields like paper. Ships that had survived 100 battles exploded in seconds. Krath's laughter died in his throat. "What is happening? Our shields. They are doing nothing, War Minister," his tactical officer said, his voice shaking. "The human weapons are cutting through them. We do not understand how." Across the battlefield, Commander Lisa Morgan stood on the bridge of the destroyer USS Defiance. She watched the council ships burn and felt no joy, only grim satisfaction. "Chief Wright," she called to her engineer, "the new weapons are working." Thomas Wright looked up from his console. He was an old man with oil-stained hands. He had spent 30 years studying every piece of alien technology humans had ever captured. Every probe, every crashed ship, every signal. "They should work," he said. "We built them to work. The council thought we were primitives. They did not hide their technology from us. They did not think we could understand it." He smiled. They were wrong. The battle lasted 30 minutes. When it ended, 847 council ships were destroyed. The rest were running, their engines burning hot as they fled back across the border. The humans had not lost a single vessel. On the eternal victory, Krath stood in the middle of his burning bridge. Smoke filled the air. Warning lights flashed red. Half his crew was dead. "This is impossible," he whispered. "We are the subjugation fleet. We do not lose." "War Minister," his aide said weakly. "We need to retreat." Krath wanted to refuse. He wanted to turn around and fight to the death. But even he could see the truth. The humans had been ready. They had been waiting. And they had weapons that should not exist. "Retreat," he said. The word tasted like poison. Back on the USS Defiance, Commander Morgan watched the enemy flee. She thought about her grandfather, who had told her stories of human wars. Wars where they were outnumbered. Wars where they should have lost. Wars they won anyway. "They always underestimate us," she murmured. Young pilot Daniel Foster appeared at her side. He was barely 20 years old, but he had just survived his first battle. His hands were still shaking. "Commander, why did they run? They still had more ships than us." Morgan looked at him. "Because they finally understood something, Lieutenant. Numbers do not win wars. Spirit does. And they do not have what we have. When Cass, friend." "What's that, ma'am?" She smiled. "We have nothing to lose. We were ready to die today. Every single one of us. They were not. And that made all the difference." Far away, on Nexus Prime, High Chancellor Moore received the news. He watched the recordings of the battle 3 times. He saw his mighty fleet torn apart by creatures that were supposed to be primitive. War Minister Krath knelt before him, his scales dull with shame. "They did not fight like primitives," Krath said. "They fought like they were waiting for us. Like they had been preparing for this moment their entire existence." Moore's energy form flickered. It was the closest he could come to shuddering. "Because they were," he said quietly. "They have been preparing since the day they first looked at the stars. We thought we were hunting animals. We were wrong." He looked out at the galaxy, at the stars that had belonged to the Council for 50,000 years. "We were hunting something that hunts back." 6 months had passed since the battle. The galaxy was changing. On Nexus Prime, the Council met every day. They argued. They shouted. They blamed each other. Some wanted peace. Some wanted war. Some wanted to pretend the humans did not exist, but they could not ignore what was happening. 3 species had left the council. They called themselves the Free Worlds. They said if humans could stand alone, so could they. More were thinking about it. The whispers were spreading. After 50,000 years, the council was cracking. High Chancellor Moore watched it all from his private chamber. His golden light was dimmer these days. Worry did that to him. We must try again, he said to his advisors. Send our best diplomats. Offer them everything. Full membership. Equal voting rights. No tribute. Nothing above them. His advisors gasped. Such an offer had never been made. It went against everything the council stood for. It is better than war, Moore said quietly. And it is better than watching our empire fall apart. The diplomats went to meet the humans on a new space station built just for this purpose. It floated in the empty space between their territories. A symbol of hope. Ambassador Rachel Cooper represented Earth. She was a woman with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. She had spent her life studying how to talk to people. Now she was talking to aliens. The council diplomats presented their offer. They used beautiful words. They promised friendship and respect. They said humans would be equal partners in ruling the galaxy. Cooper listened carefully. When they finished, she smiled sadly. We are grateful for your offer, she said. The diplomats looked like she had struck them. Refuse? We are offering you everything you asked for. No, Cooper said gently. You are offering us a seat at your table. But your table was built on subjugation. For 50,000 years, you have forced species to join you. You have taken their freedom and called it protection. You have made them servants and called them partners. She shook her head. We do not want a seat at that table. We want the table itself to change. What do you mean? I mean the whole system must end. No more forcing species to join. No more protectorates. No more tribute. Every species must be free to choose. Join if they want. Leave if they want. That is what we are asking for. Not a place in your empire. The end of empire itself. Though, the diplomats returned to Nexus Prime with empty hands and heavy hearts. On Earth, President Andrew Mitchell met with his advisors. General Marcus Stone, the head of the military, pounded the table. We should attack now, Stone said, while they are weak and confused. We can take their border worlds. We can... No, Mitchell said firmly. We are not conquerors. We did not fight for the right to become what they are. We fought for the right to be left alone. Scholar Yenny was there too. She had left the council and now lived on Earth. She had become a bridge between the two cultures, helping humans understand their enemy. The council is terrified, she told them. They do not know how to handle a species that cannot be bought or bullied. But there is something else, something worse. Mitchell leaned forward. What? The elder species are meeting in secret. They are discussing something called the Genesis Protocol. It is a weapon from ancient times. It can kill every living thing in a star system. They have not used it for 30,000 years. The room went silent. They would destroy entire worlds? Stone asked. They are desperate, Yenny said. When the powerful become desperate, they do terrible things. Mitchell stood and walked to the window. He looked out at the blue sky of Earth. Somewhere, up there, his daughter was training to be a pilot. His son was studying to be a doctor. Millions of people were living their lives, not knowing what hung over their heads. Then we must be ready, he said. Sir, Stone said carefully, even if we stop the weapon, we cannot beat the entire council. We are strong, but not that strong. Mitchell turned around. There was something in his eyes that made everyone straighten in their seats. We do not need to beat them, he said. We just need to survive. Every day we survive, more species will question the council. Every day we stand, more cracks will appear. We are not fighting a war of conquest. We are fighting a war of example. He looked at Yenny. You left the council because of us. Others will too. That is how we win. Not by destroying them, but by showing everyone that another way is possible. Yenny's eyes were wet. You would risk everything for an idea? We always have, Mitchell said simply. That night, intelligence reports confirmed that the Genesis Protocol was being prepared. A massive station was being built in council space. It would take 3 months to complete. Mitchell called Admiral Hayes. How many ships do we have now? 600, Hayes replied. We have been building fast. It will not be enough to win, Mitchell said. But it might be enough to matter. Prepare Operation Prometheus. When that weapon is ready to fire, we attack. Sir, that could be suicide. Mitchell was quiet for a moment. Then we will die. On our feet, Admiral. Like humans always have. He ended the call and sat alone in the darkness. Outside his window, the stars were shining. Cold and distant and full of danger, but also full of hope, because somewhere out there, other species were watching and learning and starting to believe that freedom was possible. That was worth dying for. The Genesis station hung in space like a metal god. It was the size of a small planet. It had weapons that could burn the life from entire star systems. And it was surrounded by 5,000 warships, every ship the Council had left. Inside the station, technicians worked day and night. In 48 hours, the weapon would be ready. In 48 hours, humanity would die. High Chancellor Moore watched from his flagship. His golden light was bright again. This was the only way, he told himself. Sometimes you had to destroy, to preserve. The humans were too dangerous to live. They had infected the galaxy with their ideas. 3 species had already left the Council. More were thinking about it. If the humans survived, the Council would fall. Better to burn them now, before the disease spread further. Is the weapon ready? He asked. 47 hours. High Chancellor. Moore nodded. Good. After this, the galaxy will remember why they obey. But far away, in human space, 600 ships were preparing for their final mission. Admiral Hayes stood on the bridge of the USS Liberty. Around him, the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled, waited for his command. Every ship was crewed by volunteers. Every pilot knew they might not come back. Open a channel, Hayes said. All ships. His voice echoed across the fleet. This is Admiral Hayes. You all know why we are here. The Council has built a weapon to destroy us. Our homes, our families, everything we have ever loved. In 47 hours, they will fire it. He paused. The silence was heavy. We cannot let that happen. We are going to attack the Genesis station. We are outnumbered 8-1. Many of us will die. Maybe all of us. His voice grew stronger. But if we fall fighting. If we die free. And we will take that station with us. Because that is who we are. That is who humans have always been. On 600 ships, men and women stood taller. Some were crying. Some were smiling. All of them were ready. For Earth, Hayes said. For freedom. For everyone who ever refused to kneel. The fleet jumped into hyperspace. They came out firing. The space around the Genesis station turned into hell. Human ships dove through waves of enemy fire. Missiles and beams crossed in the darkness like deadly lightning. Ships exploded on both sides. The vacuum of space filled with fire and death. On the USS Defiance, Commander Lisa Morgan fought like a demon. Her ship was hit 3 times, but she kept fighting. Around her, friends were dying. Good men and women who would never go home. Target their shield generators, she screamed. We need to get through. Young pilot Daniel Foster led his squadron toward the station. Enemy fighters swarmed around them. He watched 2 of his friends explode in front of him. Then, 3 more. Soon, he was alone. His ship was damaged. His weapons were almost empty. He had one choice left. "Command. This is Foster," he said into his radio. "Foster, no." Morgan's voice came back. "Pull back." That is an order, but Foster was not listening. He pointed his ship at the station's main shield generator. The massive structure filled his view screen. He thought about his mother back on Earth. He thought about the sky he would never see again. "For Earth," he whispered. He pushed his engines to full power. The explosion was beautiful. The shield generator tore apart in a ball of white fire. And suddenly, the Genesis station was naked. Its shields were down. Admiral Hayes saw it happen. Tears ran down his face. "All ships! Concentrate fire on the station! Now! Everything you have!" 600 beams of light hit the station at once. The metal god began to burn. Explosions rippled across its surface. Inside, technicians ran and screamed, but there was nowhere to go. High Chancellor Moore watched from his flagship. His golden light flickered with something like pain. "No," he whispered. "This was supposed to save us." The Genesis station exploded. The flash was so bright it could be seen from 100 light-years away. When it faded, the weapon was gone. And with it, the Council's last hope of victory. The remaining Council ships retreated. They had nothing left to fight for. Humanity had lost 200 ships. Thousands of brave souls were gone forever. But they had won. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy transformed. 17 more species left the Council. Then 30. Then 50. The great empire that had ruled for 50,000 years was falling apart, and nothing could stop it. High Chancellor Moore requested a meeting with President Mitchell. They met on the same station where Ambassador Cooper had rejected the Council's offer. But this time, everything was different. Moore appeared as a dim golden light. He looked tired. He looked old. He looked defeated. "What do you want?" he asked. "Empire? Revenge?" Mitchell shook his head. "We do not want to rule. We never did. We just wanted to be free. And now, everyone else can be free too." "I do not understand," Moore said. "Power is everything. We fought for 50,000 years to keep it. Why would you give it away?" Mitchell smiled gently. "Because power over others is not what makes us strong. It is the power to choose our own path. That is what we fought for. That is what we will always fight for." 1 year later, the Galactic Council was gone. In its place, the Galactic Assembly was born. Every species had an equal voice. No one was forced to join. No one paid tribute. Freedom was the only law. Ambassador Rachel Cooper took humanity's seat at the first session. Across the chamber, hundreds of species watched the humans with something new in their eyes. It was not fear. It was hope. Scholar Yenny sat beside Cooper. "You could have ruled them all," she said softly. "Why did you not take power when you had the chance?" Cooper looked out at the assembly. "Because that is not who we are. We did not fight to become the new masters. We fought so there would be no masters at all." Far away, on the USS Constellation, Captain David Miller stood at his viewport. The same viewport where he had first seen alien ships. The same place where everything had begun. A young officer approached him. "Sir, what do we do now?" "The war is over. We won." Miller looked at the stars. A whole galaxy waited out there. Mysteries. Wonders. Adventures. Now? He smiled. Now we explore. The ship turned toward the unknown. Behind it, 1,000 worlds celebrated their freedom. And on Earth, children grew up hearing the story of how humanity said no, how they refused to kneel, how they changed the galaxy forever. Some things never change, and the universe is better for it.